Now you can hear me.
Hey guys,
Hey.
I'm gonna add a title here. All right. All right. I think we're good to go. Hi guys, I want to welcome everybody to this special webinar. I'm sure a lot of you, like Dr. Robert and myself, are cooped up at home, and what a better time to be on a webinar like this. And so we're going to get started in just about 8 minutes. Maybe you want to get yourself a glass of water. There's the man himself, Dr. Robert. So we'll get started in just a little bit. What are you drinking there, Dr. Robert?
We got some Flow, and I've got my organic coffee. I'm ready to go. I'm excited.
So guys, if you want to take time to get a glass of water or a cup of tea, we're going to get started in just about 8 minutes.
I'll find it.
All right, guys. So everybody, welcome. I'm super excited to be on this webinar with one of my dear friends, Dr. Robert Silverman, somebody who I've known a very long time. And I want to make sure that everybody is in a state of calm and not panicking. I think, to be honest, for the most part, from what I've seen, there's been law and order in the streets and the towns. I think everybody's hunkered down in their homes. But I certainly wanted to do this webinar with Dr. Robert to give everybody a sense of what's going on as it pertains to this coronavirus. I know most of you are not scientists, you haven't studied virology, or you're not immunologists, but I do think it's important that you have some background knowledge on what's going on with this virus. And I also think that it's important that you understand what you can do from your own internal innate immunity to combat this virus. So before I get started, I want to just introduce Dr. Robert Silverman. And Robert, I'll let you also introduce yourself, but I've known Robert for over 10 years. Immediately when I thought about my practice and also thought about educating my patients, because I think they really needed to know, what can they do? You know, in life, there's two things. There's things you have control over, and there's things that you don't have control over. And I always like to focus on the things that I have control over. And one of the things that I know I have control over is understanding what's going on. You know, what is it about this virus that's making it so pathogenic, that's making it spread so rapidly? And then also, what can we do about it? You know, what can we as human beings do to improve our own immune system? So the first person I thought of when I thought about, okay, who's going to be that logical mind, that scientific mind, somebody who really understands the topic, understands also what we can do as human beings to improve our immunity, I immediately thought of Dr. Robert Silverman. As I said earlier, I know a lot of people. I know a lot of functional medicine doctors. I know a lot of MDs in my community. I know a lot of chiropractors. And Dr. Robert is definitely the person who's going to give us the wisdom that we need to get through this. So, Robert, I really want to just thank you first.
Thanks so much for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share with our colleagues. I mean, and that's my message. We're all in it together. We are all in it together. So it's not like just because I'm New York and they close this down, somebody's in Mississippi and they haven't yet. We're all in it together. We all do the same thing. And, you know, I looked up the word leadership. I mean, we all know what we think it means. It means the ability to step forward to lead a group of people. So this is our time as docs, healthcare providers, and chiropractors to really lead in the health answer and support system. And, you know, we are essential to it. So I'm really happy to be here, and I hope you guys all get something from it, and definitely give me some feedback. It's recorded Facebook Live. Mine's Dr. Robert Silverman. I'm trying to share it right now, and if you guys have any questions, I'm gonna have a lot of time on my hands. You know, kind of reach out, and we'll do a platform on it.
So, all right. So I really want to just jump into this. I'm going to share my screen, Dr. Robert, and I want to pull up an image here. And can you see that, Dr. Robert?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So let's start off with the coronavirus itself. I think, obviously COVID-19 is the name of the actual virus. It's a coronavirus. It's an RNA virus. And again, maybe you want to explain to people what that means, but I think it would be good to start off with the general working knowledge of what viruses are, how they attack our body. So if you don't mind starting there, one of the things I thought was really interesting, this is what's called a zoonotic virus, meaning that this is a virus that's transmitted from animals to human beings. So it's a mutated species that mutates from an animal version into a human version. Now, they're not quite sure what animal. They think it may be bats from what I've been reading. But maybe you can just give us all a little bit of background on the actual COVID-19 virus itself.
Absolutely. And to speak to what you just said and piggyback on it, it was in animals, and bat seems to be the animal that they have indicated. So it was very interesting in that it mutated from animal to human in December of 2019, and then quickly mutated from human to human. So that gave it an S strain, and that mutation allowed it to be what they call slippery. So it's a slippery virus because the virus continues to mutate. It mutated again, a second time, 2 weeks later, and became a strain L. The unfortunate thing with the mutation, when it mutated with what they call a spiked protein. And that spike protein literally spikes in the lungs, and that's why we're seeing so much damage to the lung area. It's very different than the seasonal flu. People always ask, well, what's a seasonal flu? You and I probably have antibodies to the seasonal flu because for 50 years or so, we've all been exposed to it and we've built up our own antibodies. There are people who have to take a flu shot because they don't have enough antibodies. So that's the seasonal flu. Everybody is susceptible to this virus, that corona or COVID-19, because we have no known antibodies yet. And of course, we have no vaccine. And that's why there's so much panic, if you will. Now, of course, we're going to segue at some point to express how certain people may be able to ward it off and maybe just be a carrier. Some people may not even get proverbially infected, just affected. And then there's others who will be able, who have an immune system, who lead the 8 weeks to wellness lifestyle, that'll be able to make those antibodies. So that's where it's very, very different. It's also different than the SARS-CoV, which was the first one. Everybody remembers SARS. SARS was interesting in that it was very virulent in the beginning, but it got it under control really fast. So this particular virus is 86% identical in the genome. So like you said, it's an RNA virus. It's actually genome and genetics. But the mutation is, and the bottom line is, we haven't seen it before.
So can you use this image, and just for the layperson, Dr. Robert, can you explain how viruses work?
Sure. I mean, it's a great, I use Jockers also. I think his images are quite clear. So here you're basically seeing an image number one. The virus enters the cell, releasing an RNA, which is a messenger. Virus RNA invades the cell nucleus and takes over. The problem is that it takes over because it has no way of protecting it. So in theory, we should be able to protect it, but make note, because we're going to talk about how unique COVID-19 is, in that you see that attachment in number one. That attachment in number one, it's actually attaching to the cell membrane. It's attaching to the cell receptor. And I know we talked about that last night. It actually goes in and uses the viral RNA, uses the host cell to create new RNA and assemble more viral particles. As it goes through the whole processes, it overtakes with these new particles the cell, and then spreads out particles and spreads through the body. So at some point, we need a systemic defense against this. One, not to let the virus come into our cell membrane. Notice what we said, cell membrane. And then two, once it's in there, we need some sort of antibodies. We're going to, at some point at the end, have the thing that we're going to get to later. I'm sure you're going to talk about it, the cytokine storm.
So really important point you just made, and I want to make sure that we don't gloss over it. Just because the virus gets into our body or exposed to it, these viruses need a host cell. So they need a host cell to replicate the virus. So just because we're exposed to the virus, that doesn't mean necessarily that that virus is going to infiltrate all of our cells. Is that correct?
Without question. And by the way, we have viruses in our body all day. I mean, we've talked about our bacterial kingdom, myself included, ad nauseum. We have never talked about our virus kingdom, even though it's much smaller. We have viruses in our gut. We have viruses through our body. We have viruses on our own membrane. And you'll see, I mentioned the gut. That's something I have to tell you when we get to the section of what to do. We're not talking about. Everybody's talking about all these other things, but they're not talking about where 80% of your immune cells are, which are in your gut. They're not talking about, which you'll find interesting, it's a new thing that we're talking about, gut to lung axis.
So can you talk a little bit about, this is going to be a new term, but I think it's a really important term, particularly when it comes to virology. It's called R0. And R0 is basically predicts how many people are going to be infected by one person. So from what I was reading, for example, measles, which is highly contagious, has an R0 of 12 to 13, meaning that 12 people are going to be infected by one person, right? This virus has an R0 of 2 or 3, which seems to be not a big deal, right, compared to measles. But like you said, this is a virus that really we don't have any immune protection against yet, because we really haven't seen the likes of this virus. So can you maybe just talk about that for a second?
Absolutely. The measles, as you said, were 12 to 13. SARS was 2.7, but where SARS and where they were able to ameliorate a lot of SARS was in 6 weeks, they got it to 1 and below. Whereas the new COV-2 is at about 2.2. There's different numbers. I have them all over here. Imperial College Group says it's about 2.2. The problem is, they're not able to knock it down. They're only able to knock it down through this isolation that they're talking to us. SARS, they were able to ameliorate much earlier. So I wrote down the definition. So everybody, there's so much information. If I showed you, I've got notes, a copious amount of notes hanging out. But the definition of R0 is the number of cases on average an infected person will cause during their infected period. The problem is, this seems to be multiplying daily. We're not even hitting the peak. So again, getting to the concept of maybe some isolation, and believe me, no one wants, I don't want to be isolated. I want to help people. I'm not scared. I'm concerned for everybody's health, but I don't want to be a carrier. So that's really what the R0 is.
So we're kind of blessed that this has a low R0, because God forbid this virus had an R0 of 15 like the measles. I think we'd see this much more devastating in terms of its spread. So maybe can we just switch and talk about like self-quarantining, and also obviously, you know, we talk about flattening the curve. I think everybody's heard of that term, to give healthcare workers a chance to really deal with the infected cases that are more serious. But maybe can you give Dr. Roberts' prediction, because again, I rely on you for your predictions because you're a very intelligent person, on the time frame of this outbreak. And then also in the second part of the question, one of my thoughts is what happens when people stop self-quarantining, because eventually we're all gonna have to go back out into the public. Are we gonna see waves of outbreak because people are self-quarantining and then coming back into the public?
So they're talking about a second wave. So some of the doctors that I'm listening to say that there's a possibility of a second wave. Now, what they did, most people say, oh my, I can get infected again. No one said that. It's just that we may miss the infection and then go back into the population and then get a second wave. And China's really going to depict that because they've really dropped theirs down tremendously. As far as a prediction, I mean, goodness gracious, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm not a predictor. I think it's going to get a little worse before it gets better because they're testing now. So
Right.
now we're going to have numbers, people walking around, and it would appear that we were a little late to address it in the seriousness that it is. I mean, yesterday there was a whole bunch of kids on a beach in Florida and all this and all that, and we don't want to get into the politics of all that. But I think it's going to get a little worse before it gets better. So I think in the next 30 days, it'll look a little more sketchy. In the 90 days, you're going to see a change, and a change for the better if everybody adheres to what, like Fauci says. Fauci's great. And quite frankly, what we're going to share with them on what to do while they're here. Because if they're in home isolation, they have the opportunity to have we'll get to it, home cooked meals, good quality supplements.
And I think that's I think that's a blessing. I'm, in a way, I think that we can turn lemons into lemonade and say, listen, people aren't eating out fast food. They're not eating out at restaurants. So they're not eating the high processed, sugary, trans fat laden foods. And they're going to be forced to get back into their kitchens and learn how to cook healthy foods, right? So, so your prediction, if we follow the Chinese model, is 60 to 90 days. And that's kind of what I'm thinking as well.
Really, I agree. And it's interesting that you said about the economic problem. If people get a little short on cash, they have to cook at home. They won't be as apt to eat out. So I think that'll work in a very positive light. We don't want anyone in any hardship, but that'll work in a positive light. So I think one of the things I would recommend is maybe sharing some or get on home cooked recipes, and like you said, make lemon into lemonade, maybe how to make a stew or stuff like that. And maybe the foods that are good in the dishes. It may not be for this particular Zoom Facebook, but I think as a follow-up, because I think we're going to have to constantly be in contact with everybody, it would be a great choice.
And we're going to turn lemons into sugar-free lemonade that you're going to be drinking.
Gluten-free, man, gluten-free.
All right, so now let's turn to the immune system, because I think this is really where I want people to understand the depth of your knowledge. And also, I think it's a good foundation to build on when we talk about what are the proactive steps and the habits that people can do. So can you talk a little bit and discuss basically how does our immune system fight viruses? So what are the steps and processes the body goes? One of the things, I wrote some notes here, Robert, I'd love for you to talk about inflammation, because I don't think people really understand that term, cytokine storm, and the inflammation and secondary damage that occurs because of viral attack. And then also, I'd love for you to talk about, again, are there certain people, we know that there's certain people, smokers, people that are immunocompromised, have secondary diseases, but are there certain people that are just weaker in their cellular integrity, if you will, that are more susceptible? So maybe let's start off with, what is the typical immune response from an inflammatory standpoint to a virus?
You know what? Let's talk specifically about this virus. So this one is very unique. This one had a tropism. So in that tropism, there's something that I learned.
Robert, because I don't think
it's like I'm sorry?
Can you explain what tropism is?
Yeah, it's an inversion of the molecule. So it's different than anything before it's ever been seen. This tropism of the viral molecule actually cleaves now. They call it a furin cleavage. I never realized, and we've never talked about it in functional nutrition, chiropractic, functional medicine. We never talked about the furin receptors on all the surfaces in the cell membrane. They're there in the gut, they're there in the kidney, and they're there in the lung. So by the way, you can see all that intertwined. They're there. It is able to attach so readily and easily. It is 10 to 100 times more damaging to the lung cell membrane than the SARS because of this tropism, and it's enabling the furin cleavage to open up, literally opening the door and getting inside. I mentioned 3 organs. The interesting thing is that this particular virus is able to attack a multitude of tissues and organs simultaneously, and that's why it's so damaging. So what it does to create that cytokine storm is that it opens up that furin cleavage, and it stimulates something called the NLRP3 inflammasome. So we talked a lot about that in the gut. There is a gut membrane. It usually occurs in the gut when we have like leaky gut and lipopolysaccharide come out, but this damages the other organs. That NLRP3 inflammasome is the key to inflammation. It stimulates something called NF-kappa B. We've all heard about that. that NF-kappa B.
I think the people you hang out with have heard about that. I think
NF-kappa B is the signal inflammation pathway. And when it stimulates that signal inflammation pathway, it releases something called interleukins. Two specific interleukins are now released because of the NLRP3 inflammasome. That's interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 18. They are very deleterious. They are very pro-inflammatory, and they release and they release and they release, creating, if you will, this big wave of a storm of inflammation. So clearly, one, we don't want it to happen, and two, we want to have our own body defenses to knock it down and quelch it down. And there is nutrition and there's things that we can go over for the storm, but that's it in a relative nutshell.
So what is the purpose of cytokines? I always think that nature is perfect. Why would the body release all these harmful cytokines in response to a virus like this?
Trying to kill it. The only problem is our body's not effective. Our innate immune system and our adaptive immune system are not functioning well because we're not in good health, or we're older and not in good health, or we're young and not in good health, and we're not able to ward it off. It's kind of like, you ever see somebody hold a rope and the person's there? A regular fit person just pulls the rope and helps the person. Somebody who's not strong, the rope goes, the rope grows, and more force. And at the end of the day, they're not able to help the individual. You don't have enough qualified immune soldiers in your body to fend off the virus. And then eventually you become so pro-inflammatory, you damage and attack yourself.
So if I got this right, Dr. Robert, so if people have a healthy immune system, it's going to take care of the virus before we have this cytokine storm that really creates all this inflammation that creates the secondary issues that some people are dying from.
Right. They're talking about 80% of us will have a positive outcome. And then in that 20 is the difference in the symptoms, fatigue, and in some instances, fatality. So one, if our immune system is good, it can hold it off. Two, if our immune system is good and we do get attacked and there's a little break, if you will, we can then not have that damage. If you think about it, all these pro athletes, a bunch of them have been found to be positive. Many of them, they're great. They're 25 years old. I want, give me some of that DNA, man. But they said, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known. Durant and all of them. And Sean Payton, the coach of the Saints, he said, I felt a little tired. I would have never taken a test if there's no such thing as coronavirus. I work around the clock. He took it and he had it. There was a neurosurgeon where we are in Westchester County who said, I had a cold. I work around the clock. And he said the cold didn't really go. I took the coronavirus test and guess what happened? I have it. So there's a gauge, there's different degrees of it, not trying to minimize what it is, but it's all about us and what we can do to help us and the next guy.
So let's talk about that 20% you mentioned, the comorbidities. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was really interesting, an article that I was reading the other day, Robert, where it talked about China and Italy. And it talked about why, obviously, this started in Wuhan. And one of the things that I was reading was in Wuhan, they had these wet markets. And these wet markets have up to 200-300 different animals that are sold and sometimes prepared right there at the wet market. So they may have ferrets right next to chickens, right next to bats, next to salamanders. All you have to do is Google and take a look. It's amazing. And I thought, man, what a scientific experiment, putting all these animals together and mixing all of these viruses. I thought it was pretty interesting. The other thing I thought was interesting that this author mentioned, this epidemiologist, that China and Italy have one of the largest smoking populations over the age of 70. And in China, in fact, it's 65% of men over the age of 65 smoke. And it's quite similar if you've ever been to Italy as well. A lot of smokers. And where is this virus most virulent? In the lungs. So I thought, obviously, smoking is a big comorbidity, but are there other ones? So if people are, if people do have these comorbidities, that they take it seriously in terms of self-quarantine?
Well, smoking's number one, as you said. And in Italy, I've been there, they do smoke. China also. Interestingly enough, in reference to Italy and China, they had a different microbiome when tested versus India, which doesn't have it. as much and virulent, just as a little aside. But the people that you have to worry about are chronic disease. Which chronic disease? Obviously COPD, diabetes. People don't realize, and I know normally we talk a lot about diabetes with 8 Weeks to Wellness because 50% of Americans have some form of pre-diabetes, diabetes 1 or diabetes 2. But diabetes is a major issue. Other issues could be, cancer, but anything that's immune compromised, rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm going to throw this out there. Your patients that have chronic IBS and IBD, I would venture to guess, are in that particular mode, because if 80% of your immune cells are in your gut and you have IBD and IBS and you have a damage to the gut lining, and that's, celiac and the such, it poses an issue. So anybody that has a chronic disease, and for me, IBS and IBD falls in there.
Wow, that's really that's good to know. All right, so let's kind of switch our attention to what we should be doing. And what I really like to do is give people practical information. I don't think people can do everything, but they certainly can do 2 or 3 things that are going to bulletproof their immune system, if you will. And what I'd like to do, Dr. Robert, if you don't mind, can we talk about this in order of importance? So let's say that Dr. Robert Silverman, God forbid, was infected with this virus. What would be the first thing? And Dr. Robert, I know you, I know me. We practice a lot of what we're about to talk about. This is just part of our fabric of who we are. But for the average layperson that isn't necessarily practicing good nutrition, or they don't know what supplements to take, or they're not practicing mindfulness, or they're not getting enough sleep, or they're not getting adjusted, all the things that we're talking about, what are the things that they can do in order of importance?
Well, it's funny that you said that I got it. You didn't say I'm trying to ward it off so I don't get it. So then I'm that's what you said. So we're gonna get to the cytokine storm. So clearly with the cytokine storm, everything always starts and ends with food. So I'm gonna eat whole foods, no gluten, no processed food, no sugar. Sugar makes the body acidic. You need to be alkaline. Viruses love an acidic environment. Processed food, no bueno, no quality nutrients. Organic, whole foods, no dairy. Dairy's damaging, damages your gut. No smoking, I happen not to smoke, and no artificial sweeteners. So that takes care of the food. I'm gonna attempt to exercise. Hopefully I'm not showing too many symptoms.
Can we go back to food for a second, Dr. Roberts? So those are the foods, you told us the foods that we don't want to eat. Can we talk about some of the foods that we do want to be?
Absolutely. All about the greens, all about the fruits and vegetables, no grains at this point. You can have—
You said greens, not grains, right?
Right, grain, here you go.
Greens.
No grains.
Yeah.
And, grass-fed meat, beefs, plant-based with protein. And those proteins are going to be grass-fed beefs and wild fish, to the acronym of SMASH. SMASH being salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. So I'm going to eat a very, very tight diet. And guess what? And most people haven't talked about this, but I was studying the literature yesterday. I'm going to time restrictive eat or intermittent fast. Now, just quickly.
Can you explain autophagy and why that's so important? And before we get to that, one class of food that I would recommend, and maybe you just want to touch on why this is so important, are fermented foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, those types of things. Can you just talk? A lot of people have heard fermented foods are really important for our gut microbiome and maybe for the immune system, but can you tell us why?
Sure. Fermented foods are what we call prebiotics. So we want a good microbiota. We want good bacteria. We don't want to have an unleveling of good and bad bacteria. Good bacteria, even if we get it through foods or take it with probiotics, they need to be fed. They're fed by prebiotics. The foods that you mentioned, kimchi, kombucha, garlic, onions, are great prebiotics. Kimchi is interesting in that it was just studied, in one of the most abundant compounds in kimchi was quercetin, which is great for a cytokine storm. So you want to feed that good bacteria. So those are critical elements. Also, so fermented foods are great prebiotics. And if you wanted to take a supplement for a prebiotic, the best one out there is XOS, which is xylo-oligosaccharides, because that's the only one that we use in supplements that feeds just good bacteria.
So it's like Miracle Grow. So these fermented foods are like Miracle Grow for good probiotic bacteria.
I love it. It's the fertilizer for the gut.
So let's talk about intermittent fasting, and can you touch on autophagy? Because I think this is such an important concept that people and lay people especially don't understand.
Absolutely. So intermittent fasting technically means not eating for 1 to 3 days. That's not what we're advising. We talk about what we call time restrictive eating, eating in a window. So you eat in a window, for instance, you hear numbers 14 and 10. The first number is the amount of hours that you fast. The second number is the amount of hours that you eat. So we'll just call it intermittent fasting, even though you guys know I'm trying to say it's time restrictive eating. Intermittent fasting has shown to cause a multitude of positive effects, lowers blood sugar, actually builds your immune system. And what Dr. Dane spoke about, autophagy, it's your body's ability to break old cells down, use that energy and make new cells. And what they found by making new cells, the new cells boost your immune system, and in many instances have been able to kill viruses. And that goes back to 2010. Autophagy won a 2016 Nobel Prize for the discovery and the discussion of it. In addition, in intermittent fasting, time restrictive eating, we can make ketone bodies. Ketone bodies have shown to be great energy for the body, but ketone bodies also have shown to boost immune system, and they boost immune system because they block the interleukin release at the NLRP3 inflammasome release.
So just to use analogies that people can understand, Dr. Robert, I love to make analogies, but, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we can't be creating trash and taking out the trash at the same time. So in other words, I just had a 50th surprise birthday party for my wife. We had 45 people here. We created a lot of trash, a lot of empty bottles, a lot of food, and my trash cans were overflowing. Now, I literally took the trash cans up yesterday, the 3 cans of 2 garbage cans in the recycle can, but I had no more room for trash. Had I had another party, I would have just created more trash. So autophagy, or intermittent fasting, is a way to stop producing trash, to give the body a long enough period of time to get rid of the trash, just like my garbage men did today.
I like it.
All right, cool.
And then the only thing is you throw the trash out and you put a brand new trash bag in that's stronger and better than the one before.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about, we talked about nutrition. Can we talk a little bit about supplementation?
Absolutely.
I've heard of so many supplements, and I'm not a person, I take, you and I are a big believer in supplements. I have a base supplement package that I take that I believe, and I believe on my own anecdotal experience in my own life, that makes a big difference. I take vitamin D3. I've had my vitamin D3 tested. Maybe we can touch on why that's so important for the immune system. A good healthy probiotic, So maybe let's start off with D3 and let's go again in order maybe of importance.
All right, so we'll come back to the cytokine storm, what to do then. I love it. I love it. So let's get to what we do to ward it off. I'm moving all my stuff around. I prepared for you guys. So we all know that we use Nutridyne. So here's the name of the products. Here's what it is, and here's why. And you don't have to include it all. But the first thing I do is I use something called an immune support.
I'm going to just bring up so people can see.
Right.
What we're talking
now,
about.
the immune support, I thought I did something, has a multitude of a mushroom blend. Mushroom blends have truly shown to aid people's immune system. So I find that very effective. It has a small amount of D3. It's there. Some vitamin C, ascorbic acid, which is great for the cytokine storm. In addition to that, it has zinc citrate. The zinc citrate is the most absorbable form of zinc and to help the central nervous system. What a concept, central nervous system. So it's a mixed mushroom blend. It is probably selling off the mark right now. In addition, I believe using D3 5,000, between 5 and 10,000 I use. Always use it with K. I've got an article here on D3 that it showed that vitamin D supplementation was able to prevent acute respiratory tract infections. This is the British Medical Journal, 2017, February 15th. So I'm a big proponent of D3. One of my favorite.
Why does it need to be taken with K2? Because a lot of my patients ask that, Robert.
Well, D2 is for plants and D3 is vertebra. And even
why does it need to be taken with K2?
Oh, with K2, I'm sorry. Well, K, if you take D3 without K, the calcium can go in and begin to plaque. The K2 is sort of the compass to allow it to get absorbed. D3 by itself is led to plaquing. I mean, I can tell you some stories in my office where some people have made that poor recommendation. So K2 is a critical element.
So, okay, so now let's talk about, probiotics. I think we've mentioned, but is there a certain probiotic that you like? I mean,
Yeah, without question, my favorite probiotic is something called Spore Probio. And the reason I like it is it has Bacillus subtilis. Bacillus subtilis is an endospore. It's sort of like an acorn. It gets encapsulated and can go through the whole body and the destination. But more so with the spore, it has a high impact on immunity. It's also coupled in the formulation with the XOS that we talked about, so it comes with so it has its own food. Bacteriophages. 100 years ago, they had the option, or almost 100 years ago, they had the option between antibiotics and bacteriophages. They chose the antibiotic because it was a carpet bomber, it killed everything. Bacteriophages are specific. So you're probably saying, wow, what are you talking about? It's a virus now. But if you kill that bad bacteria and you keep it in good health, so it's still very positive to take, even in this viral environment, if you will.
So give us the product name for that from Nutridyne for that.
Spore Probio, 2 a day.
Spore Probio. Okay, so we got vitamin D, we got our probiotic, our Spore Probio.
And you got your immune support.
We got our immune support. Anything else?
And
I like the liposomal C or vitamin C.
Yeah, liposomal C is great. I actually think it's a great starting point. I actually use it more when it's storm. What I really like is the liposomal glutathione. So NAC, which is a precursor, has some good literature on upper respiratory. Liposomal glutathione is my favorite. And the reason I like liposomal glutathione is one, glutathione is the master antioxidant. Vitamin C, one molecule, can kill 3 free radicals. Glutathione can kill 1 million free radicals. The liposomal technology that allows it to be protected and you can get it to the desired destination. So I like liposomal glutathione. Liposomal C is really good. Some other things that you would find interesting that isn't as much on the line that I found great is Immunity Pro. Immunity Pro has what we call 1613 beta glucans. That essentially is a fabulous form of building your immune system. In addition to that, I had seen something that Everyday Essentials, which is a multivitamin, fish oil, B, and specific multi-mineral is critical to build up your immune support. So I recommend that. And the last one is Bacterial Sidex. That's interesting because it's got elderberry in it. And I have a couple of fabulous studies on elderberry here. Study number 1 was in 2014. It talked about the treatment of influenza A and B. And elderberry has shown to decrease cold duration symptoms in air travelers.
Wow.
So if you wanted to talk about a plethora of options, we just went through a lot. And my suggestion is to get a kit and put it up online, because obviously people aren't going to the office, and write a little thing saying, hey, here's a great way to keep your immune support. And I think that right now Nutridyne wishes there's 40 hours in a day, because they're just so busy, because so many people are craving immune support.
And how about zinc? Is that only, and for some reason you're going in and out a little bit. I don't know if that's me or you, or we just have too many people on there, but just make sure your signal's good. But how about zinc? I always hear about zinc. Is zinc only good for bacterial? And I hear it's obviously good for the mucous membranes, but is zinc important for viruses as well?
Yeah, zinc is in the immune support. You can take zinc separately. Zinc citrate is the form. Zinc is an excellent because it helps with enzymatic actions in the central nervous system.
So let me ask you a question, Robert. I lay out all these supplements on the table, and I said, Robert, you can only take 3 of them. Which 3 are you taking?
Real simple: immune support, D3 5000 K2, and Spore Probio.
There you go, Dr. Robert's big 3. All right, so let's talk about sleep. Is something that I think is absolutely critical. Anybody that knows me, Robert, knows that I love to sleep. I really enjoy my sleep. I get up early. I get up at 4:35 almost every day. I'm asleep by between 9 and 10, and I need my 7, 8 hours of sleep. But can you talk about why that's so important for our immune system?
Absolutely. Sleep is a critical element because sleep is when we regenerate and recover. Sleep also is a point where we detox our insurance before we exercise. Healthy immune system, again, central nervous system, the spine and the brain. So we're recovering and we're replenishing at the time of sleep. Good quality sleep is critical. You know, it's interesting that we talk a lot about melatonin with sleep. Everybody talks about it. Melatonin is a critical element if you have the cytokine storm. One of the biggest reasons that kids under 9 or less don't get COVID-19 is they have 10 times the melatonin that you and I do. So they've attributed that melatonin is a critical element, so much so that they're recommending melatonin 20 grams per day.
So one of the things
And that's a lot.
yeah, I'm just common sense guy, Robert, but how many times have we all gone to bed very sick and we woke up healthy? We woke up at least feeling a lot better. And, you know, from my understanding of the immune system, it's really a part of the autonomic nervous system, our sympathetic and parasympathetic system, which really get downregulated, at least the sympathetic system is when we're sleeping. So we kind of shut down the fight or flight sympathetic cortisol. Maybe you can talk about cortisol and how that affects the immune response. But I know at night we really, really downregulate the sympathetic system, right? And we kind of turn on the mechanisms, as you talked about, that really help the body heal itself.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. We as chiropractors, you know, if you go in a chiropractic office, you'll see the muscle guy, you'll see the nerve guy, but how many people see the autonomic nervous system guy? The balance of that autonomic nervous system between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system clearly for immune function. So now we're really talking about something like the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve tone is decreased. Vagus nerve is actually the inlay between your gut and brain axis. More so than that, its sole purpose, and I talk about it all the time, sometimes I forget to mention it, is to decrease peripheral inflammation. So one of the things, again, nobody's talking about is stimulating the vagus nerve. Two good ways to do it other than sleep, and everybody should always get sleep. Number one, violet light, 405 laser, works like a chip. You can get one. I don't have it in my other room. It's the vagus nerve nutritional protocol. Citrulline, omega-3 fatty acids, and some fiber. You do that and you're going to have a change in vagus nerve tone. You're going to have that autonomic nervous system. Again, we're recruiting different systems. It's kind of like sending the Marines, but now we're also sending the Army in. We're really backing up with more defense because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about defense.
So even though we may not be able to get on a plane and go to Vegas, VEGAS, we can go to sleep and go to Vegas, VAGUS. Right?
Absolutely. Remember, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So when you have sleep, doesn't count.
You don't want to know what happens sometimes when I'm sleeping, but that's a different webinar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there a certain number of hours that you recommend ideally, or does it depend on the person?
No, I don't think 7 to 8 good quality hours is really going to work well. Hard for a guy like me, type A, to get that. But I think at this time, since we're home and we don't have the time and travel to get to work, we're working right now in front of the laptop. I recommend everybody getting sleep, maybe a little 15, 20 Americans don't sleep enough. Last since the advent of the light bulb, people used to sleep on 10 hours a day. Now we have light bulb.
Yeah, we're still getting some breakup in the audio for some reason.
And one thing, the blue light.
Yeah, is it the blue light? So
it's the blue light.
So I want to talk a little bit about, since we're chiropractors, maybe people know, you know, on the line, maybe people don't. I'm a 3rd generation chiropractor, so I'm 51 years old. I've been in practice for 28 years. And I just want to tell everybody anecdotally, I mean, I can't cite scientific research on this, guys, but I've been adjusted my whole life. Okay. I've adjusted my children and my wife my whole life. I've adjusted a lot of patients that literally started with my grandfather. I still have a handful of people that started with my grandfather in the 50s and 60s that I take care of. And I will tell you that people who get adjusted on a regular basis are simply healthier than people that don't. And Robert, if you don't want to talk about why that is, I certainly will, but it has a lot to do with our nervous system. And Robert talked about the nervous system and its connection through the vagus nerve, longest nerve in the body, to the GI system. And, think about this, guys. I really want you to think about this. It's in times of crisis that we need to summon up our nervous system's response. And we don't plug like we plug our cell phones in, Dr. Robert, at the end of the day to recharge, right? We don't plug ourselves into an outlet to recharge. So how do we power back up that nervous system to do its job, to really support the gut, support the immune system? And I think that's through motion. I know half of your brain is devoted to nothing but moving your body. And you stimulate your nervous system through movement. That's why you always feel better when you're moving. That's why exercise is so important for your nervous system and your immune system. And I know when people get adjusted, it's stimulating the pathways in the spine. There's 53 joints. You only have one joint in your shoulder. You have 53 moving parts in your spine. They're called joints. You have 24 vertebrae. And when you get adjusted, you're stimulating that nervous system and you're down-regulating the sympathetic system. Anything that you want to add to that? I just really feel, I know based on my own anecdotal observation, that people that get adjusted on a regular basis are just healthier.
Well, one, I feel your passion. That's evident. That resonated and it reverberated through the laptop. And I agree with everything that you said. And, we don't study the adjustment enough in the research setting, but we do enough in the empirical setting. And I always tell everybody, if you're aligned, it's like a straight line. Mm. If you're not aligned, you got to walk around, and what takes longer, and what's the issue? And the body's all interconnected. We cannot live without it.
So somebody said if you slow down, they think the buffering isn't catching up with how fast your brain works. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm throwing it out there as a hypothesis.
You know what? My wife was just saying that she thinks sometimes my brain or my mouth fires too quick. Maybe I needed a cervical adjustment today.
All right. So just to recap here on what people can do. Food, right? We talked about the important foods, the greens, the high colored fruits and vegetables. We talked about fermented foods, right? We talked about the important supplements, 3 biggest being vitamin D3, which I absolutely agree. Immune support, which is a complex of different immune supporting supplements. And then we also talked about the spore. Tell me the probiotic again. I take Ultrabiotic daily, so I'm
great probiotic, but I prefer this. They're all good. I like the Spore Probio because it's got the spores, the Bacillus subtilis. A couple other things, if I can interject. One, I want a great article in New England Journal of Medicine. So it's all about the surface stability. Just so we'll know, the virus the virus can live, and this was in the New England Journal of Medicine, for 72 hours. It can live on surfaces. It lives in a cardboard in 24 hours, and it can live in the air 3 hours. I'm sorry?
Give that chance to buffer a little bit. I think when you're slower, Robert, we can hear you better.
Okay. So in the New England Journal of Medicine, what they saw was surface stability. The virus can live on a table surface for 72 hours. It can live on a cardboard surface for 24 hours, and it can live in the air for 3 hours.
Got it.
So for the cytokine storm, because I got a couple of texts that they wanted to know, the melatonin is melatonin 20. Get some ascorbic acid. That's when I would really like to use the liposomal C. This is if you're sick. Use a product called Nervies because it's got PEA. What a hidden gem. There's nothing better that I've seen after melatonin that'll help decrease the cytokine storm. And last but not least, you may want a little taurine because of the binding to the lung. And of course, why are we not taking care of our gut? So we've got the Spore Probio. You may also want to consider something called the GI Restore. And you may want to have a Digestive Complete because it's a full digestive formula that enables you to digest at a better efficient rate.
So healthy food, healthy gut means healthy immune system. Get that gut healthy. Learn about leaky gut, guys. Learn about things like the GI integrity or the GI restore to heal the gut's mucosal lining. I think it's extremely important. I love fiber. I love high fiber foods, guys. It is a prebiotic to the probiotic bacteria. It helps to act like scrubbing bubbles to clean out all the crap between the folds of your colon. That literally sometimes, Robert, I see pounds and pounds of garbage in people's colons when I look at their films. And all that is just sludge laying against the mucosal lining of the gut, preventing the good, healthy stuff from getting into your system and literally leaking garbage back into your bloodstream, causing a lot of autoimmune issues that we're seeing. So good foods, good supplements, good rest, okay? Good exercise. My wife and I went for a nice long walk. We live out in the country. We held hands. We talked. It was beautiful. It was awesome, right? So get out in nature, get some fresh air. Don't be afraid to go out and exercise, guys. Certainly maybe not go to a park where there's tons and tons of people, but go find a walking path where you can get out in nature and get some free vitamin D through natural sunshine. Get yourself adjusted, guys. Find a good chiropractor. We're remaining open. I was supposed to go on a 50th birthday celebration with my wife to the British Virgin Islands. It got canceled. You know what? And that happens, right? So I'm not sulking. Okay, we're going to go on and reschedule that. And we're going to do what we have to do to take care of patients during this difficult time. So I just want to talk a little bit about where we go from here. We're going to wrap up in about a couple minutes, Robert. And I also want people to get to know you. You've written a book. It's called Inside Out Health. And maybe talk about your book. Guys, I just want to give a little plug for Dr. Robert. He has not only been a friend, he's been a mentor and a coach for me. And I love to learn because I think when we're more educated, we make better decisions. And I want to make best decisions, not only for me, but for my patients. And Dr. Robert has been such an amazing source of education for me. And he's been a mentor and a friend. And I want you to get to know Dr. Robert like I have. Maybe his wife doesn't feel the same way because she has to live with him. But, he's an amazing human being when it comes to this knowledge. So, Robert, can you talk about your book? Can you talk about where people can find you?
Sure. Wrote a book a few years ago called, it was an Amazon bestseller, Inside Out Health. Speaks about fixing the body from the inside out. You can get that on Amazon. I have a new book coming out this year. Be interesting with all that's going on, how much it's going to be delayed. The anticipated release date is August 2020. It's called The Superhighway to Health, 7 Steps to Optimizing the Gut-to-Brain Axis. You guys can clearly get that. Dana and I are going to make sure they have accessibility to that. If you guys want to follow me on Facebook, I am posting every day. I started on Wednesday. It's been blowing up great. 1:00 p.m. And I'm going to try and get Dana on once with me also. I'm talking about things to do with COVID-19. And that's Dr. Robert Silverman. All my stuff is Dr. If you guys want to chat, we're going to have some time. You can go through Facebook or info@Dr. Robert Silverman. Always happy to talk. It's a time now that we all have to join hands, lead forward in our health. And I'm happy to see so many people interested in trying to help other people in their surrounding areas. It's quite impressive.
Awesome. And one thing I'm going to do is I want to share something with you guys. I'm going to share my screen again. And let me just go to view here. We're going to go to full screen mode. So this is obviously, guys, our baby. This is something that we created, my sister and I, a long time ago. And the reason we created it is we thought that people needed to modify their lifestyle. Dr. Robert talks about inside out health. And I don't think that we've really operationalized inside out health in the healthcare system. We've operationalized sickness care, symptom care, crisis care like we're seeing now. But where's the care to prevent the problems before we have the cytokine storm, okay? So we have to make sure, guys, that our roofs are patched, that our doors are secure, that we're ready for the storm before it hits, that we're boarded up. Because certainly, the blanket's hitting the fan right now, and is your home strong? So one of the things that Dr. Denise and I wrote is this book. And in here, guys, we wrote this to talk about all the things that we've been talking about today. Chiropractic care, how it impacts the immune system, exercise, why body comp. We didn't even touch on this, Robert, but why body composition is so important to metabolic disease, right? #1 biomarker of aging, loss of muscle mass. Keep muscle on your body. You want to keep healthy, strong, keep muscle on your body as you age. You can't do that without exercise. We didn't even talk about high intensity interval training and how important that is for fat burning and stimulating the immune system. But everything that we've done, we talk about macronutrients, carbs, fats. We didn't touch, Dr. Robert, on the paleo or keto, but these are things that we talk about on a regular basis. And then also mindfulness. You know, I'm a big meditator. I'm a big believer in meditation. And this is really part of the program. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but one of the things that I think is really important is if you go to the back of the book is, and we're going to talk about this next week, is some of my favorite recipes are in the book. And I think one of the best things that you can do right now, guys, is get back in your kitchens and start making food, okay? So get back in your kitchens. My wife and I love to cook together. It's a time where we can kind of connect and cook. Get back in your kitchens, and we're going to make this available to you guys so you can really understand the whole program. 8 Weeks to Wellness is simple. It's centered around 3 concepts: how you move, how you eat, and how you think. How you move and exercise, how you think and manage stress, and what you eat and drink. And we want to maximize and optimize all 3 of those. It's also based on 5 fundamental therapies: getting adjusted, eating properly, exercising properly, doing meditation, and getting massage. So next week, guys, I'm going to do a webinar. I think this is a perfect time. You can do 8 Weeks to Wellness from your home. We can teach you how to do this program structured from the comfort of your own home. So look out for that, guys. I'm going to set up another webinar. I'm going to post that to the 8 Weeks to Wellness page so you guys can jump on. And I'm going to teach you a lot more about health. And maybe, Dr. Robert, you want to join us for that webinar. I'd love to have you. But now I want to talk about X's and O's. We've talked about this virus. What I want to do now is I want to talk about building you up, building your health up. It is the #1 resource that you have in your life. As I said at the top of this program, you take you to every relationship. And there will be a time, guys, that we have to leave our homes and go back out in the public, okay? And guess what? Corona is going to be out there. It's going to be waiting for us. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you going to do about it? Now is the perfect time, guys, to focus on the #1 thing that you need to focus on to be confident when you go back out in the public, and that's your health and that's your immune system. So Dr. Robert, I just want to thank you. Let me just take a look, Dr. Robert. We have maybe 5 minutes. I want to see if we necessarily have any questions. Christina, did you see if we had any questions along the way here?
Sorry, I was muted. It was mostly about the sound qualities here, but on the Facebook page, we're talking about different ways of stimulating the vagus nerve. So Christy was saying gargling and gagging works. Also deep breathing exercises and humming. That was kind of hard to hear before. So,
hey, Dane, would you like me to, in one of the webinars, we can do a quick little how to stimulate the vagus nerve, and I'll share my vagus nerve nutrition support.
Perfect. Yeah, if you want to join us, we're going to do the webinar, guys, Monday, the practical webinar. We're not going to talk about the virus on Monday. We're going to talk about what you can do to get healthy. That's going to be Monday at 3 p.m. Dr. Robert, if you can join us for that, I'd love you to jump on.
3 p.m.
Yeah, and we can talk about how to stimulate the vagus nerve. That's awesome.
Great.
All right. Anything else, Christina?
What probiotic Dr. Wozniak was asking, and you were saying that was the spore probiotic?
Spore probio, but I like the one that Dane uses also. And the bottom line is I always use the spore probio. I then also use a second one. So I'm always taking more than one. And the key to good gut health is diversity in the microbiome. So you do want to pollinate with different probiotics.
And I also want to mention that Dr. Robert and myself use a company called Nutridyne. This is my website here, guys. And if you go to the bottom, you'll see that it takes you to the online store for Nutridyne. And Nutridyne is truly one of the best supplement companies out there. They don't sell to the general public. They only sell to healthcare providers. They're triple GMP certified. I could go on and on about the quality of their products, but there's a reason they deal with doctors. We do a lot of secondary education. We have great reps who help to educate questions for us on what the best probiotic. I mean, I think, Robert, they have what, like 30 different probiotic products?
Yeah, they have a lot of ultrabiotics and stuff. So they've got a real cornucopia list that you could go in. If you could put up their probiotic, you could see. Yeah, I use the spore as a base, But if you use these other ones, like you were mentioning, you can choose from the cherry tree, if you will.
So you can actually go in here, guys, and type in these products and find the product. So you can go to any of you who are dealing with the 8 Weeks to Wellness Doctor, you can go to your doctor's website, and they should have a Nutridyne store where you can order these products, and they can be delivered to your home. You don't have to go out and get them. They can be delivered right to your home, guys. Or when you come in for your adjustment, you can get them, or we'll even run them out to you. That's how important we think that these are. So you're getting takeout food, and they're running the takeout Chinese food out to your car. Might as well come to the office and let us run out some vitamin D3 and some probiotics to your car. All right. So stay plugged in, guys. We do have, like you're watching, some of you on the Facebook page, stay plugged into the 8 Weeks to Wellness page. We'll get you the link for the webinar that we're going to do on Monday. You're sitting at home, guys. You might as well be engaged in things you can do to be healthy. And we're going to go over that on Monday. Dr. Robert, I just want to thank you for your time. I thought everybody got probably as much, if not more, information to really feel confident as we move into this next month or two, which certainly is going to bring along with it a lot of uncertainty. And I think you just made a lot of people more calm, more certain.
Excellent. And you know what? At some point, we should talk about the gut to lung axis and its ability to help fend off these kind of virulent viruses.
I'll tell you what, you make a list, Robert. I know, like, in that brain of yours is so many more topics that we can cover. So let's cover them. You know, I think that there's a lot of good things that you and I could cover when it comes to getting yourself healthy. So I appreciate everybody. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. It's 4 p.m. Eastern. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. The sun has literally come out, Robert, as we were on this webinar. So I think God's shining on us, and I wish everybody really a safe, healthy, get back to your families, enjoy the time, guys, and don't be fearful, be faithful, and we're going to get through this. Thanks so much.